All right, I think we're on, Diane. Welcome.
Hi, good to
And
see you,
welcome.
Bobby.
Yeah, great to have you. Everyone, welcome to the first episode of, I don't even know what I'm calling this yet. For now, I'm calling it Purpose at Work. And the focus really is around intrinsic motivation. And we'll define that a little bit in just a moment. But first, I want to introduce my dear guest today, Diane Magers, who is the CEO of CXPA, Customer Experience Professional Association, and she's had amazing experiences at AT&T and other organizations. So I'm going to turn it over to Diane to introduce herself, and then we'll warm into this conversation.
Oh, thanks, Bobby. Yeah, hi everybody, and welcome. Today, I'm hoping we're going to talk about some really cool things. Bobby and I have been talking back and forth a little bit, and really thinking about you as the audience and what you're looking for, and things you want to get out of this discussion. So, for me, I have share with you. I'm actually a clinical psychologist by trade. So even though I can't see you, I'll kind of know what you're feeling just because. No kidding. I did that for a long time, and then I went to work for a friend of mine who was starting a company in the basement of his house, and 4 years later we had 400 employees, and so I was chief bottle washer and dishwasher and van driver and everything in the organization. I just fell in love with business, but more importantly, I fell in love with his philosophy of starting with the people in his organization. That meant his customers, his suppliers, his partners. And he really taught me about how business can succeed because you're focused on the human, you're focused on the person and what they do and everything that they do and how that contributes to everyone's success. So that's what impacted me. And then I went on to take my psychology really into understanding how brands and customers and brands and employees and brands and suppliers work together in this great world of ours to make the world really a better place, whether it's, driving revenue, selling products, selling services. Everybody is contributing in their own way. And so caring for those contributors, us, is really important. So today is what we're going to talk about, right, Bobby?
Yes, thank you very much. So let me go ahead now and introduce my definition, at least, of intrinsic motivation. So it's those things, as Dan Pink, I like his definition the best, actually, from his book Drive. It's when we are doing work that has meaning beyond ourselves. So it's purpose, it's autonomy, when we come to our work feeling like we know why we belong and what our contribution is. And it's mastery, when we get to really do our best work. And I like to call it giving our gifts to the world. And so that's intrinsic. On the other hand, we have extrinsic, which of course is necessary. We have to get paid, we have to get benefits. But what Dan says in that book and others have said and lots of research shows is take that off the table. Take care of those basic needs so people are not fearful or in need of, whether they're going to be able to pay their rent and get food for their family and healthcare, but then really move to focus more on intrinsic motivation. And also, to be clear, even things like providing free food and wonderful benefits in the workplace, a nice, friendly workplace, and maybe even games and things, that's all still extrinsic. And so let's just be really careful about how we view that. Again, they have great benefits of helping morale, etc. But a happy hour, yeah, it's good, but it's momentary. So let's dive into that, Diane. What do you think of those definitions, and what do you think really drives motivation?
Oh gosh, I think, if I think about back to my psychology days, we see psychology and emotion and neuroscience and all these things being talked about today in business, which absolutely thrills me. But to your point, I think that's what companies are starting to realize, is that you can take care of the basics. And as technology increases every day, our basic needs are more taken care of than ever. And it's quicker and faster, which leaves us kind of wanting more. I see a lot of people really overwhelmed with information, and they've got, things are being taken care of for them, that they're really looking for that next step, that's something more. And so I think the definition of how we all gain what's my purpose on this world is different, right? It isn't about just getting the basics. It's more about how we connect with each other and what we do and how we give back to the world. So I completely agree with those definitions. It's okay, what are you doing about that? How are you helping other people in the world, the people you work with, the people you work for, the people that you work in the society with. How do you understand that and make that work for you, and make it part of just the way that you would go about your life?
Yeah, thank you. So I want to go to a very current topic right now. Diane and I were talking just before we turned the recorder on. This is literally 2 days after, and it's still going on. Hurricane Harvey in Houston, and lots of Texas is being impacted. Diane is in Dallas and has lived in Houston, has friends there. It really relates directly to this about humanity. Diane, if you could share your thoughts on that and how it plays out in the workplace.
It's, I think I don't know why sometimes I think it takes a crisis for people to let that natural giving and caring come out. We think about how we get so disrupted, we get so wrapped around things that get, politics and all things going on, and to have something happen to people where they're in need, I think really allows us to have that come to life and let ourselves give. I was watching HEB is a large grocery chain down here, and one of the largest in Texas, and there were lines of semis of food trucks and generators and all HEB, right? And a lot of their employees going down in this dangerous area to provide food and water to folks, and putting themselves at risk, right? It's not over with, right? We don't know what's going to happen. So that to me is where we sometimes forget how that feels. It kind of, for me, goes back to 9/11, right? Getting that paper in on time, or responding to that RFP, or shipping that crate really takes a lot of perspective. And I think we lose that perspective sometimes when we're getting in the day-to-day grind, or I call it the gerbil wheel. We get on the gerbil wheel and we're just doing our work. We forget that we're human, and we forget that there's a lot more to us than just coming in and doing tasks and checking the boxes. And so I think this intrinsic and extrinsic motivation is really put into perspective when we start to think about human and our lives and our contribution to lives and our contribution to others. So I think it's critical to think about your perspective of what you do every day and how you run your business, or how you're a part of a business or an organization.
Yeah. And, let's connect that with, we were also touching on Maslow's hierarchy. And it's, my belief that our situation, it's situational, right? So you wake up this morning and there's a hurricane. And very likely you're going to come down to the basics and take care of those fundamental needs and put other things behind. But there seems to be a thread, right? Because the humanity comes out of it.
It absolutely does. And I think that's sometimes when I think about, we're talking about employee experience, or, experience at your work or at your career. And I hear a lot of people say, well, we really need to engage our employees. We really need to make sure that they're happy. And so we're going to put a foosball table in, or we're going to redesign for an open works station so people feel more connected. And I think those things are important, but it's kind of that whole take care of my basics, make sure I have a safe place to work, that I feel comfortable. But we're seeing now that people are really bringing in this sense of what really that experience is like. So if you think about going to Disney, right, that you have an experience wrapped around the activity, and to really think about what the employee needs and wants at that period of time emotionally. Like, I need to be recognized. I need to be valued. I need to give my input. We're really seeing a lot more people be vocal about this in the workplace, right? You see it in the employee engagement surveys. They say, well, how engaged are you? How much do you like it? And people are really saying, I don't really care about this. I want the feedback, but I want to be known and contribute and be a part of something bigger than I am. We'll talk about millennials too, because I think they've really gotten a bad rap, right, in this space.
Yep. Yeah. I think there are huge benefits with them. So you touched on great things there, and they tie with trends in performance management. You touched upon feedback and how it's becoming more frequent. Yes, there's a need for it, but at the heart of it is really those emotional triggers you just mentioned, the desire to be seen and desire to feel valued, and really part of something bigger, right? And so time and time again, we hear employees say, even when there's bad news, tell us, share what's happening. recognizing that there's certain things that are confidential, for public reasons that you can't reveal. But the more people feel like they're in, that to me is much more that concept of, drinking the Kool-Aid, right? Of feeling like I know that I play a part in that bigger thing. And, I'm quite familiar with large organizations that are very big, known global brands, but really I think this applies for any size of company
Oh, it
from.
does. Oh,
Yeah.
it totally does. I've been in an organization where there's 30 people, and you'll talk to the receptionist, and she says, "Yeah, I don't know anything about what's going on. I never hear anything. They don't ever involve me in any of the decisions, right?" And that's where I think it's really critical. You're absolutely right. It's kind of like it's a marriage, right? If you're having a one-way conversation with somebody and you're not getting any feedback, or you're coming in and you're being a part of that relationship, but there's nothing coming this way, it's really difficult to stay in that relationship. And so I think people have to converse and talk and work together, compromise, right? It's all about compromise, even from the executives, to front line. And we just don't see that. They don't really see it as a relationship that needs nurturing, conversation, giving, getting, all of those pieces and input, and putting something on the table and hammering it out together. That's what creates a strong bond, and that's what creates a community. And I think that's missing today. It tends to be trickle down, and people kind of say, okay, I ended up getting this much information when I really wanted, and I could contribute more.
How about, let's pivot on that give and get with the millennial piece, if you want to go there, because I think that's a good entry point to it. Is we also hear a lot of trends around how, yes, they want to be seen, they want to be recognized, and they want that communication and regular feedback. It's my belief that exactly where you're going, that it's got to be two ways. That unless the frontline folks ask for what they want, and take initiative and responsibility for their part, in a vacuum, what's a leader to do and really know? And are they truly, we often hear that comment of leaders are up in their ivory tower. Well, who's that sounding board? I love reverse mentoring for that reason. I mean, millennials reverse mentor up, to the CEO.
Yes. Well, millennials, it's right. You're right. Millennials, here's what I say. They've gotten such a bad rap because they haven't had to go through think about it. Somebody my age, so I'm not old, but I'm not a young chick either. I've been through the whole, when you came into work, you clocked in, you did your job, and you went home, right? There was not this, I want to be part of it. I can be social. I can be on my computer. I know more about the world than I did, right? It was very closed in. And so millennials coming in are doing and saying the things that we've always wanted to say. We've just not been able to, because we were trained or brought up, or as part of the culture that we had as part of just this industrial industry, just as we were coming in of our own. So I think they're giving us fair game to put these things on the table. They're kind of cutting the path for us, if you will, to say, hey, yeah, I want more. I mean, I see that a lot of times with people who are my age or younger, looking at millennial and saying, oh my gosh, I wish I could say those things, and I wish I could make those decisions, and I wish I could, be a part of that and really speak my mind. And so I think they're inspiring in a lot of ways to us. And they do want to do good work. I mean, I have four teenagers in my house from 16 to 24, so I totally know what they're after. And that's what they say. They say, at their young age, I want to be a part of something bigger than myself. And that takes us, usually us being, my generation, it takes us a while. We're so busy taking care of the basics and getting the car and the house, and that takes over. And then we finally realize, oh my gosh, I don't want any of this stuff, and I just want to give back. And so I'm a little jealous of this generation, because they're able to say that, and they're able to do that. And I think companies are listening, because they're recognizing that customers and employees are in control now. It used to be them, and now they're not. And so they're having to listen, and they're having to understand what those needs are. So that's why our profession is it's growing so rapidly.
It really
From the,
is. Yeah. I want to insert another data point. I don't know if you're familiar, Diane, with Aaron Hurst, who's written the book, The Purpose Economy. And then he's done research with LinkedIn, I believe in 30 countries twice, like 2015 and 16. And it's basically segmentation, and they've come at the same sort of conclusion that there are purpose-centered employees, that purpose drives them, or purpose-driven. There's money-centered employees, and there's title-centered employees. And he has numerous data points to show not just the happiness and productivity of the employee, but the profitability and results. Forms of Endearment is another great book that has lots of data, right, on this point. So yeah, I think that's really tied with this. And oh yeah, and what he also says actually breaks a myth, is he says that the highest propensity of purpose-centered are actually women baby boomers who've come back into the workforce more than millennials that we would expect. So that's an interesting data point to pivot this, you know, traditional thinking these days, that it's the millennials. So, and then why I think that's so exciting with what you shared is exactly, it's this marriage is, you know, it's like we're excited about them bringing this. We want it in our lives as we, you know, get older, that I think it's a real good yin and yang of the intersection of those things. Yeah.
Totally is. And I loved your comment about reverse mentoring, because I think there's a lot of wisdom that we carry as well, and kind of seeing where things have come from and the appreciation of that, and knowing just more about how human beings work, because that just takes time. I don't care who you are, what generation you were in, right? It just takes time to develop that. You don't become a parent overnight, or you do become a parent overnight, but being a good parent, you know, takes some time. So it's just that learning curve. And I think we're ready for that. And the other data point that you brought up was this segmentation of the types of employees. And we see it the same way with customers. We talk a little bit more about needs-based segmentation. And that's not something a lot of folks talk about. They talk about demographic segmentation, or you know, product segmentation, however they're dividing it, generational segmentation even. And it's really, we're finding more needs-based. So if you think about that, the needs of what you just talked about, somebody who wants to come in and they're all about the paycheck, and they're all about clocking in and out, and they want to know they did a good job and they're good. Or somebody's coming in and saying, I want to work for a nonprofit because I want to give back day one. I know that's important to me. I don't really care about the money. Those are different needs. And so for customer experience professionals, we're focused on the customer's needs of a brand, but also the employees' needs of a brand. So understanding those, designing experiences around that, so that we design an environment that cares for them and nurtures them in the way that they want to be nurtured. And so we're seeing the same things we've done in customer experience, understanding them, is really been turned toward the work environment. And so I think that's part of what you're talking about, and building that culture is kind of how things get done, and who we are as people together.
Yeah. Yeah, and the overlap, you know, I think that's also what this, I'm so excited to have you be the first person I'm interviewing, because the reality is we are here for the customer. There are lots of leaders who've said, from Herb Keller, Southwest Airlines, right, that treat the employee well and the customer will follow. So again, the intersection of caring for both of these go hand in hand. You take care of your employees and they'll take care of the customer. And I see this play out repeatedly if you compare and contrast very frontline retail kind of environments, where you can tell that there's been that ethos in their culture and the way they've been trained and brought in, that, yeah, there are distinctions. I don't want to name any names, but, you know, we know who they are.
They are. I think the audience, you know, when I have this conversation, whenever I speak on this topic, people say, oh, I totally get it. But how do I do that? Like you're saying, yes, of course I want to take care of them. And yes, of course I want to, you know, meet their needs and engage them. And they say, well, how exactly do I do that? Like, I've got people working for me today, or I'm in a team, in an organization. And how do I do that? So that tends to be the next phase of, great, I get it, I want to do that. And how do I begin to understand where people are? And
Perfect. Let's go there. Let's hear about what you're hearing and seeing as those proof points that are showing ROI, that are showing the benefits, that are very tangible, because we are still very bottom line oriented. No CEOs, it's got to be, I mean, back to Maslow, right? Without profitability, you're not going to have employees, and you're not going to have the perks and the benefits you want to give. That's just...
Exactly. It's not going to happen.
Exactly.
So I guess I would ask the audience to think about a bad experience they've had recently with the brand. Right? So just think about that last experience where it's the one you want to tell everybody the bad story about, right? If I say that, people go, oh, I want to tell you this story about my cable installer, or this airline trip I took, or this hotel I checked into, right? And invariably, you can see and feel this emotional power come out. And it's negative. Or if they're telling a very positive story, it's positive. And if I were to ask you, thinking of that negative story, what did you do differently with that brand? And they'll say, well, I don't go back to them, or I tell people, I wrote a negative review, or I went back. And so I think that what we have to recognize is that those emotions that we create, whether it's with a customer or an employee, drive behavior. And that behavior is what impacts your bottom line. So if I have a bad experience, I tell people, I don't go back to your store. You've lost my customer, my value as a customer, my money walked out the door. I told 5 people about it. You lost their money now. And so we, I think, have to begin, as I said at the beginning, go back to this psychology and understanding of the emotions that we're creating as people go about their work. I mean, there's definitely the basic work that needs to get done, but caring for that emotional state is what is really refining, driving it. So Southwest or Whole Foods, those are brands that make us feel good, and the employees feel good. And it's not by accident that they've been able to create that. So to your point about how they've done that is things like they've involved the employees in developing what the organization is going to be. They're listening to their ideas. Lots of companies have innovation stations or innovation pipelines, whatever you want to call it, because they recognize that people have great ideas, and this creativity needs a place to go, and they need to have input into their environment. I mean, that's a piece of control. That's a piece of who we are, and mastery that you talked about earlier. That the customer survey, the employee surveys and customer surveys aren't going to cut it anymore. You can't ask somebody once a year, like in your marriage, right? You wouldn't ask once a year, how we doing, right? You would be having ongoing conversations. You would be involving them. You would be having, very deep conversations about what's happening in the relationship and fixing issues as they came up, right? You'd be, and you'd have your finger on the pulse. And so we're seeing that also be part of it. We're also seeing a huge increase in what I would call learning and development, talent, right? We're in the talent economy, but it's taking a different flavor. It's really not about the job training. It's more about skill training to grow the people, empathy training, active listening, design thinking, things that get people out of their box that aren't really about the job. They're more about who they are as individuals and growing them as a person. And I think those are some of, just give you a quick example, some of the ways that organizations are changing to make their employee experience different and endear themselves to that brand. And so they get the long retention, they get the better customer experience because they're working on building that employee up.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a saying, I say that soft skills there's nothing soft about soft skills. Right?
That's right. You're absolutely right.
And there are lots of proof points now with the focus on these things like mindfulness, right? You would have been written off a few years ago as yoga and just something for the West Coast folks. And yeah, Google is West Coast, but Search Inside Yourself is a program that was launched at Google and is now gone all over the world. And they've given it away, or teaching others to do that. Of course, Zappos with their customer experience school and how they teach others to have those great customer experiences and engage their employees. Where else do we want to go? This is so fun. I want to be here a long time, but I feel like we should start wrapping it up. Oh, we were on metrics, Diane. So what are your thoughts on, I'm a big fan of employee net promoter score in sort of almost held side by side with NPS for customer. I'm wondering from your perspective, yeah, where are you with that? And I know there's, a lot of metrics out there, but.
Yeah, well, I'm probably on the other side of the fence. I'm not a big fan. I do believe that people need a metric. I think they need a directional. I kind of say NPS is kind of like this, right? It's it's made up of so many different things. Like you ask somebody one day, their net promoter score could be really low because they just had a bad experience. It could be really high because they just had a good one. So it's arbitrary. But I think the important question and what employees are actually also looking for is the why. So why did you give a score, or why do you stay with the company, or why do you come to work every day and have the attitude that you do, or why are you giving back and putting that discretionary effort in at your job? I think it's understanding the why that's really important. And so that has changed in our environment as customer experience professionals, has really changed how we get feedback. So we can get the net promoter score, but if you don't get a why behind it, it's a hollow number. And I think employees are feeling the same way. Like I really need to define for you what it means for me to have a good experience and not. So it changes the way we gather feedback and how we know our employees, right? So that requires more focus groups and more innovation sessions and more ways that you can just have conversations with the human rather than putting it on a piece of paper. Because I can tell you, I can't write what I feel on a piece of paper. And sometimes I don't know until somebody really probes and asks me. So it's a challenge because it requires more effort, but I think it's completely worth it.
I love it. I'm fully with you because, what I'm hearing is it takes patience. And, we move so fast and we're so goal-oriented, where leaders are all about quarterly results, that we're always looking for that. We're desperately seeking that thing to peg something on. And the real answer is it's not that simple. And in a world of social media and customization, you've got to take that time to really understand the segment and their needs, be it an employee segment or a customer segment. So I fully agree. And I want to introduce actually something I'm working on right now. And so this will be the shameless plug at the part of the interview. So there's a program I'm building called Purpose at Work, likely the title of this series of interviews, where the premise is that, it's all well and good for a company to have a mission and values. And I really believe in it. And they must instill what that means beyond the posters, of course, and the campaign, right? We know that. But even further than that, and very, to me, tied with the millennial movement, or with the gifts that they're bringing us, is can we make space for individual employees to get clear about their purpose and values, with or without the company, and then see how it intersects with where they are, so that they can find, each individual can find that sweet spot, right? We always look for that Venn diagram, and that Venn diagram, that middle spot where a person goes, that's it. That's why I wake up every morning excited to go work at X, Y, and Z company. What do you think of that?
I think it's a great concept, because I would tell you there are people who are very self-aware. I'd tell you people who are not self-aware. They've never asked themselves those questions. They don't really know how to figure out what it is they like to do, right? And I think that's part of this whole, purpose of work, is discovering, what does turn your crank? Like, what do you love doing and what do you avoid? And really paying attention to that. So I think it's very important that people become more self-aware, and there's a lot out there that can help you to do that, and kind of, looking at all the things that are going on in your life and figuring out what you gravitate toward, and just making sure you're aware of that. And I'd say journaling. I mean, people always say that's right, but I think very successful people always journal. They're always kind of recording things about themselves and what it means to them, and how they interpret it. And, oh yeah, I didn't realize that. I mean, it took me, till just a couple of years ago to recognize there were certain things that was like, I'm not good at that. I should stop pretending I even like to do it, because I'm not good at it and I don't like to do it. So I think those types of like bingo, and recognizing that for yourself is critically important, because if you're not doing the things you like to do and you don't have your purpose in mind, you're right, it's not going to work for you or the organization. So you get frustrated, the organization gets frustrated. You don't need that friction in your life, which we're all about trying to remove friction from our life, right? So why would you do it for yourself in your organization or in any team or group or whatever you belong to? That's just part of knowing who you are and what you enjoy.
Yeah, and you hit on another great point there. It's about choice. Those that are not ready to do that self-discovery, I'll go as far as saying, are scared perhaps of really going deep to look inside. That's fine. There's no judgment there, to each their own, and it's their choice. And we know that the benefits of looking at those patterns and learning from them go a long way.
It's funny you say that. I'm recalling a story with my younger daughter, and she was getting ready to go to a dance, and she said, "Oh yeah, but Mom, everybody, I'm concerned everybody's going to looking at me, and they're going to be thinking about me, and they'll pay attention." It's like, honey, you know what? They're all so concerned about themselves and what others think of them that they're not even going to pay attention to you. So it was this realization as I'm teaching her this value that, we think about ourselves and we're really harsh and think the world is judging us. And really it's about who we are and how we're giving to the world, and not the other way around. And so that was a moment for me where I was like, I should drink my own medicine, right? And start thinking about that, because we get so wrapped up in what other people are thinking about us and how we're perceived that we don't pay attention to our own internal signals. So a little psychology lesson there, I guess, for the day.
We know when we're interviewing someone or we're in a conversation, we can kind of sift through that body language and level of comfort we have with someone, whether we're going to open up and really, there's a lot being said about authenticity, but you know it when you see it, sort of thing, right?
You certainly do.
Any other thoughts as we wrap up? And definitely, anything you'd like the audience to know about Customer Experience Professional Association and ways to get involved, or wherever you'd like to send them. I can definitely add links later, so go for it.
Let's do that. Yeah, I think it's anybody in the audience. I think a couple of things, just some key takeaways here is pay attention to the people around you and be thinking about what they're looking for and what they need in their lives, back to that needs-based segmentation. I think your point about being self-aware is really listen to that inner voice. I know that a lot of people say, women have this intuition, but it's because I think we pay attention to those things and we don't kind of tap them down. We let them come out, and I encourage everybody to do that. And then, yes, to your point, selfish plug on my end, if there's more you want to know about experience design and how design thinking and innovation, some of those things can work for your employees, definitely reach out, because that's what our association, the people that are part of our association, do every day. They're trying to understand customers and their needs and employees and their needs and kind of bring it all together. So I'm happy to support in any way we can.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Diane. It's been such a pleasure to connect with you. I look forward to more conversations over time. All right.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah. Have a great day. I'm going to stop the recording.